Hello and welcome to the very first ever Let's Code. I'm one of your hosts, Darren Kitchen.
And I'm Sebastian Kinne.
Yay! I'm coming to you guys from 720p land, whereas Seb's got the HD stuff going. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
So we have the ability to switch around to our desktops and show you guys some fun stuff that we've been working on. And we figured that this would be a great opportunity to dive into the Wi-Fi Pineapple module system and the APIs. I'm going to be helping to moderate this stream, so please leave your questions on irc.hack5.org and #pineapple. You can also message those directly to me on Hack5Darren in chat, as well as on the YouTube chat, and you can also tweet at Hack5Darren on IRC as well. Yeah, very exciting to get this going, Seb. We've been talking about this for quite a while.
Yeah, we have. A year or so that we wanted to start these, and I guess now we are.
Here we are.
So, what better way to start off with than developing modules for the new Wi-Fi Pineapples?
Right. So this is for the latest Wi-Fi Pineapple 6th generation system that is both on the Nano and the Tetra, and so we're very excited to show you kind of like how the back end, how to make these modules, how to manage them, how they work, some of the API stuff, and we're gonna go ahead and get right into that. So let's get some Ron and Jankies going.
Yeah, music always helps when working and developing, right?
Totally. So walk me through it, Seb. I'm going to play noob here, and I'm going to need a little explanation of basically what is a module on the Wi-Fi Pineapple.
Right. So modules on the Wi-Fi Pineapple, the most common ones are so-called GUI modules, or modules that you can see on the web interface here. So if I just quickly pull this all up, all of these are modules. Now all of these are system modules, but if we go up here and we say get modules from wifipineapple.com, we're going to get a list of modules that are currently available. And you'll see that all of these are right now, they're GUI modules, but we have one more type, which you won't see here right now because it's not released yet, but they're CLI modules, and CLI modules basically are command line only. GUI modules can also have a CLI component, but I think today we're just going to be covering GUI modules.
Nice. Yeah, so it looks totally different than it did before, Seb, but why is that?
Well, we redesigned the entire system. We're using Bootstrap, for example, for making it look prettier and not having to spend time on developing, which helps other people also create their modules in a more rapid way, not having to worry in style guides and so on. So we just use Bootstrap for everything. Installing modules is now super simple. It's all for the front end we use AngularJS, and for the back end we rewrote the PHP API to have this single input, single output type of model, and yeah.
And so are these modules, are these things that we do, or are these things that anybody can do? Who can write modules?
Anyone. So anyone is absolutely able to write them. The modules get submitted to us, and we will review the module, and then we're gonna make it public. If we obviously check, because it needs to work, 1, and 2, it don't have any bad code in it, so we don't allow you to ship binaries or something like that, only if we compile them and host them ourselves.
Yeah, that kind of brings us to like how they're hosted and stuff, because I know that installation and the whole management of it is pretty simple. You want to walk us through how a user would manage modules?
Right, so if in terms of just what do you mean in terms of, sorry.
Well, I mean, we're talking about like the repository. I don't have to like download a tar gzap and like SCP it over to the Pineapple.
No, this is why I just did this a moment ago. So if you look at the modules right now, I've got one installed right now. I'm going to install another one. How about Cabinet? Is a pretty one. Mm-hmm. So install to SD8 card, and it downloads the module, installs the model, and it'll be available right away. So see on the sidebar it popped up. I click on it, and this is a manager, basically a file manager that Newbie wrote. So
this is nice because it looks very consistent with the rest of the platform.
And Bootstrap makes that really easy. So what we're going to be doing here in a minute is we're actually going to start developing one, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. Do you mind turning off your redshift? It's a little bit orange. Awesome.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, hey, no worries, man. I mean, Redshift is an awesome,
helps the eyes.
Yeah, shout out to those guys. I mean, that's an awesome program for any hacker who needs one of those as you are coding late into the night. So I guess let's go ahead and get started. I want to follow along. I want to build my first module, more than just hello world. Let's build something useful here that we can, I don't know, just get stuff in and out of the Pineapple. Maybe some simple, like, get some uptime out and send some, pass some parameters to it, things of that nature.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Let's create a.
So I guess we need to understand a little bit of the structure then.
Exactly.
About how a module is made.
So let's talk about how a basic module is organized. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm in an empty folder right here. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it sample. Just going to call it sample right now to create any module. This could be any module name, but this should be consistent with the module name you choose. And also notice that I use the uppercase S. That's because for the API, the class needs to match the folder name in terms of spelling, and classes should normally be spelled with a capital S.
So what does that mean about, does that change anything when it comes to spaces, for instance, or is this actually just the directory that it's going to reside? So
this is the directory that the module is going to reside in. Obviously, never use spaces in a directory name or file name. That's a Windows thing, and we don't do that. So the first thing is that we need to create a few different folders. So the first file we're going to, a file structure, right? So the first thing we need in our module to make it a module is a module.info file. After a module.info file, we want to create a directory. Because we want to, it's a GUI component, so we want to create an HTML file. This is where basically our UI is going to live. We're going to create a JavaScript folder, and then touch module.js, create where we hold our JavaScript. Obviously, you could import that somewhere else, and then we're going to create an API folder, and in there we're also going to touch API/module.php. Right. So those are our first, this is our basic structure. This is what we need to make a GUI module. So I'm just going to open this in my favorite editor. Everyone's is different, I suppose.
Wait, so you're not opening, this is the Wi-Fi Pineapple Nano, though. You would develop it on the Nano using Nano, right? I mean, that just makes sense.
Right. No, because I prefer not to develop modules on the Pineapple itself, although it's totally possible. What normally happens is if you're called Darren, you reflash your Pineapple with unreleased modules on it, and it just wiped out all your progress.
Oops.
Yeah,
but that's never happened.
No, of course not. So I'm gonna just open this in Sublime Text because that's the editor I choose to use. I'm gonna do the uploading from the terminal just to make it a bit easier for people to follow along what I'm doing exactly. So
yeah, definitely install your SSH keys because you're just going to be SCPing the folder over and over.
So
again.
if I actually so I've done that already. If I SSH in, I've exchanged keys already, but so that's just to make it easier. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to quickly upload this folder. Actually, we're going to go one folder out, and we're going to upload this folder to the Pineapple. And we're going to do that by putting it, not temp, into Pineapple/modules. Right there. So I'm just copying the sample folder in. I'm just doing it this way. You can do it many other ways. You could copy the files using a GUI program if you're not comfortable with the CLI, or you can do it through Sublime Text, which is what I would normally do because it's easier and I can do it on a file-by-file basis. But just for the sake of this, I'm going to... Oh, you know what? I did this yesterday for the test.
Rue. You're trying to log in as Rue. What's up with that?
Okay, so I uploaded all these files, and right now, if I refresh this, you're not gonna,
Oh, hey,
have the
sample.
folder sample, yeah, but the sample itself doesn't.
But they're empty. You've just touched the files.
Exactly. So inside this module.html, module.info, we first want to define or module basically some information about it. We do that using JSON. So the first thing we want to give it is a title. The title is going to be a sample module, or sample module. We want to give it a version. We're going to give it 1.0 for now. And we want to give it an author. It's going to be Seb for now. Okay, we just save that. And you'll notice that if I upload this now and I refresh this page up here, you'll see that it'll actually say sample module instead of sample.
Nice.
So the title differs from your actual module. And the same goes for...
And that's just JSON, or...?
So this is just a JSON array
Nice.
that we're putting into a file, yeah. Now for the module, the HTML contents, because we use Bootstrap, I can just create a quick div. I'm just going to create ugly one now? Oh, can't. Okay, but just to show this off, obviously, you know, repeat this process of uploading and refreshing, and it says hello world. So this is all very, very simple stuff. There's nothing, you know, special about this yet. But so we use Bootstrap so we can make the whole thing a bit prettier. So the first thing, I'm going to make this a panel default. So all of this is something you can look up in the Bootstrap documentation, or if you know, do web dev. I'm not a web developer normally, but you know, this is.
Well, let's see. Can you actually increase that font size just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Thanks, appreciate it. So we got our, so we have our token hello world at least.
Yeah, so we have our hello world. Let me.
Yeah, let's make it pretty.
Yeah, so let's make this a bit more pretty. Oh God, why is it doing that?
Oh, so all of these are just the presets that are in the Bootstrap CSS.
Yeah, so all of this is so I'm just you know, showing, making this a little bit prettier. That we've got something a bit nicer.
And if you want to know, if you want to learn HTML, the best person to ask is Foxtrot, correct?
Yeah, Foxtrot over on irc.hack5.org. Absolutely love CSS, especially CSS.
Right.
But he will.
Whenever
he
I
will
have
help you with
CSS
the
questions,
HTML.
I go to him.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so we made it look a little bit prettier, but obviously this isn't really, you know, what we want to do. Is the font
Whatever,
still too
best
small?
module ever. You know, we'll see if anybody, they say
Well, just because I
perfect.
said font too small.
Yeah,
so,
Korang says it's perfect, so
okay.
let's go with that font size.
Cool. So, you know, we have hello world, but this in itself is not very interesting. Now we have a static module, which we don't need the API, so we could have actually not made this PHP API part here. So we're first going to start, you know, with a couple of JavaScript things, because we use AngularJS, and that might, not everyone might be familiar with AngularJS. So to make it a bit easier, we created a few wrappers, we created a few functions that make the interaction with the API dead simple. So the first thing we need to do, we want to create a controller. And this controller is basically going to be what we're gonna talk to here. This is the template, and then in the controller we're going to talk to the API and relay that to the template. So the first thing we're going to do is register controller. We do it that way, and we're going to name that. And it's so our module is called sample. I'm going to name this as a sample controller. Mind you, this needs to be a unique name, or should be a unique name, so it's always good to prefix this with your module's
Right,
name.
because why? Would we run into problems if two modules used just
The
simply
same controller name? Yeah, what'll happen is controllers get overwritten, and you know, because they're lazy loaded in, you should not do that. There'll be conflict. So the best practice is to just prefix it with a module name now.
Nice.
So now what we need to do is we do something called Dependency Injection, and we created a service called API, and then there's another service called Scope, which is important, and then we're going to actually write the controller in here.
So everything what resides inside of this controller, if we want to interact with that module.html?
Well, so we don't need just one. We can have multiple controllers, and I'm going to show you how to link the controller to the HTML in a second.
Okay.
But for now, we create this controller, and to register this on the HTML side, we actually have to go up here and we have to say ng, and you see how there's lots of different things you can do with Angular for meta tags.
And also why you should be running Sublime.
Well, other editors will do this too, but I do.
Not
It's
as
very
pretty.
handy. Yeah. So ng controller, and we call it the sample controller. So what this will allow us to do is allows us to put variables in here. So for example, say hello string, right? So this is our hello string. If I now reload, or if I upload these files and I reload this, you're going to see we get no output. There's nothing here. But if I go into our module .js, into the controller that we just defined, I can do scope. Scope basically hooks the scope of the so this is the scope, and we can hook into that. So what we do is on scope, I named it hello string, so hello string equals hello world. And if I
and that's
upload that, it'll automatically get, oh no, what have I done? Hello string,
capital
hello
S.
string. Love it when that happens. Something out, didn't I?
What did you leave out?
I know. I made a mistake.
No, you never do that.
No, I do.
There.
Right.
You've got
No.
a bracket in front of API. Dollar API right there on line 1.
Yes, that's meant to be there.
Oh, that's meant to.
What I
don't
forgot
close
to
the
do.
bracket.
So
you do it
this
at the
is
bottom.
this is something I should have mentioned. What I
this
forgot
is that
to do
crazy one-liner.
is where you have to. So
We have to define
we're
it internally,
injecting
don't we?
API and scope, but we also have to consume that. So API scope. So we do that, and we upload that, and yeah, hello world. Sorry about that. That's
No worries.
yeah.
But so
Live.
that's kind of like, I don't know. I've seen that before in things like Liquid.
Yeah, right. So this is basically just a certain templating, the templating system that Angular uses, right? So we're able to define whole strings like that. You can also do, you could do math in here, so you could do 6 times 6, and that should give us 36.
There we go.
So you can do that stuff, but
You just did math live on the air.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. that means more to Darren and I, but. So let's put that
But
back.
this is JavaScript too, so if we wanted, we could like write all sorts of crazy JavaScript snowflakey stuff.
Yes, but please don't do that. That would be terrible practice.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so let's do something more interesting. There's a couple of things in Angular JS that we can use and that we will use in a second, just to show some more input and output, right? So say I wanted to create a table, and in the we want to display a list of items, but we don't want to write all these items out. We don't want to hard code them. So how do we do that in AngularJS? So what we do?
Could we just do that with an array?
Yes, we could, but let me make this prettier first. And actually, if we're doing this, we should do this the right way, right?
Yes, and do it in an iframe. I'm sorry, I'm just here to troll.
Yes, you are. Okay, so because we all love tables, right? Because that's the way you
Totally.
you do stuff. Yeah. Well, for tables, it's fine.
For tables,
Okay.
tables make sense. For
So-
anything else, they don't. You,
Let's do
you
this.
just call stuff.
Stuff. All right. So we're gonna make a table of stuff, and this will look like
So we have to call it something.
yeah. So just to
Make sure that looks
make
pretty
sure
first.
everything's good. So we've got a table entry, and stuff is one of the items. Yes.
Yep, looks
Okay.
good.
So now that we've gotten this, and actually
You reversed
I
those,
can't.
but that's okay.
yeah I can't. No, this is what happens when you do things live. You forget things. Now it looks right. There we
Yeah.
go. So obviously this is relatively uninteresting. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to repeat this tr, and then we do that with an ng repeat. This ng repeat will allow us to take a variable. So for example, thing, or thing in things. Let's be very
Thing in things.
yeah.
I'm sure this is going to come back.
Yeah, of course it will. This is basically it's basically a for loop, and we're gonna loop over that. But we obviously need to define things somewhere. So what we can do is inside here, we can do just like we defined this here. We can do scope things, and then we can pass it, and we can do pants and shoes and a belt. Sure. So if we then load that, we should get a table for things. Okay, so I'm just giving a very brief rundown of some of the functions of AngularJS. It's something that you might be making use of down the line. Probably will be making use of down the line. Yeah, so there's that. So now the thing is, this isn't too interesting yet, right?
What are you talking about? This is the best module ever, Sab. It's going to get 1 million downloads.
Well, this is very static content, right? So if we want some dynamic content, and we want to write our own dynamic content, we'll need to go into our module.php. We need to write our own API component, and that's gotten a lot easier to do than before.
Okay,
So-
now we're in my happy place.
Your happy place?
Yes.
You sure?
I saw the PHP open
Right.
So I'm taking it, this is where I can do all sorts of terrible things, like doing is sets to gets and all sorts of other bad stuff, right?
No. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to write a relatively clean module. So the first thing that you're going to notice is we're always going to be in the namespace Pineapple. I'm just putting it up here. People can yell at me for style there, but this keeps it out of the way. and everyone needs to do this for the modules. Anyway, we create the class sample. Notice how sample and the sample here, both of they need to match. So if you do an uppercase S, you need to do an uppercase S here too. The only function that you need to have for this module to even load is the route function, right? And that looks like that. So all we do here is create one function. That's the one we have to implement this function, otherwise the module won't load. And the reason why we do this is because when you're passing a request to our API, we handle the routing for you, and in the end we call your route function, and then it's up to you to route certain requests to certain functions of your module. Obviously you wouldn't have to use just this class.
So that's the basic in and out of all modules.
So the way it works is there's a couple of things that are exposed in a module for you. The main ones you need to know about is this request. That's one of them. Then we have this response, and we have this error. So those are the three.
So it's like standard in, standard out, and standard error.
Yeah, pretty much. And the way it works is these are all objects that hold the request and that hold the response and the error. So for example, if I wanted to set a response in this route function, which I'm going to do right now actually, is I'm going to go this response equals, and then I could say for routing. Sure, let's do this. So what we're doing here is we're doing a really simple response. What we could
but
also
we're not
do,
responding to anything. We're just sending a response.
Right now we're just sending a response whenever the route function is called. You could also do something like this. Right, so you can specify an array that gets sent back. And what happens is the reason why you set a response and why you would never do something like
echo bad.
You know, you won't do this because we have the single input, single output model where you break the response doing this, and you would, because what happens is AngularJS expects you to pass JSON back, at least with our implementation. So we will automatically take that response, we will JSONify it, we'll send it over, and it'll extract it again and pass it to the right places. So what we do here, so we obviously this will overwrite it, so let's take it away. So routing function. Let's just try to get the string back from the API right now, because we're setting this response whenever this module is loaded. You don't have to create a.
Well, what is it responding to? Is my question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not implemented yet. Right now, it's not responding to anything. We're not making a request yet.
Okay, so let's ask it.
Right. So in our module, what we need to do is we have this. You've noticed I previously, I basically imported this API service, and the way that you make an API request is by typing $API request equals like that, and this function takes two parameters. The first one is an object, which is the request object. The second one is a function, which is the callback function, what happens when it completes, and it takes a response. So if you don't care what the response is, you don't actually have to get the response back, but we want to get the response, so we're going to put response here.
So what do we have to send to it to get that response?
Yeah, let me get there. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to specify a module, and the way we specify a module, is by typing in module, and then we say, well, our module is called sample, and again, this will coincide with whatever you called it right here, and your folder name. So sample, and then we want to we don't need to pass anything else because we haven't done anything else. So right now what happens is that this request will automatically hit the API, and it's going to call this route function, and because we're not doing anything, we're not taking any request in, we're not treating anything, we don't actually need to pass it anything, we're just immediately setting the response to routing function. So what we'll do now here in this response, we probably want to check for errors, but we'll handle that in a couple of steps later. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to take response. Actually, we're going to say scope dot text equals response. So we're doing that every time this is called. So when this controller initializes, we make this request, and then we're going to set the scope dot text to response. And so let's define that to an empty string and put that somewhere here. So I'm going to get rid of our table, or actually I may just replace the hello string, right? Why not? Right. So let me upload that, and what you'll notice is right now again, so module.js text is undefined. If I reload this page, it says routing function, right? Because what happens is for a second it stays blank, and when the request completes, we get a routing function put in there.
And so it just replaces whatever we had previously
it
called
doesn't replace the text. What it does, well, it replaces the variable, right? So it
So if we
sets
put
the
like
content of this variable to whatever the response is answering. So just because it works, just to show this off, we can do that and actually respond with an array. And when I do this, you can see that it'll handle this for us. So if you you wouldn't want this, you'd actually specify something. You can also pass named arrays, but we'll get to that a bit later, or associative arrays, I mean. Okay, so this is a simple way to make a request, right? The thing is, this isn't that useful. We often want to make a request when something is clicked or when something happens. So what we wanted to do is we want to define a function on the scope, and we're going to call this function. What do you want to call this function? What do you want to actually do with the API?
Let's get the uptime from the system.
Right. So wow. So the way we define a function here is we just do this. Wow, typing issues today. So we define a function. What we can do is we can just grab this and put all of that in here. Okay, so what we do now is whenever we execute this getUptime function, we're gonna execute this API request, and it's gonna talk to the module sample. The thing is, this alone isn't going to give us anything but routing function, right? It won't give us anything but whatever we put in here. So let's clean up this code a little bit. Let's actually make this useful. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function every time.
Why is this one a private function, whereas the other one is public?
Because of keeping functions away from other people. No, it's basically there's no point in this function to be nothing else will call this function. So we don't need to expose it. There's no good point, so we make it private.
Okay. Does the route one need to be public?
The route one has to be public. If it's not public, it can't get called by the API.
Well,
so the route one has to be public, and everything else can be private or protected if you want to overwrite it later on. So you can build whatever you want to build.
Okay.
But so in this getUptime function, we need to set the response. But before that, let's actually start routing, because that's what this function is all about, routing, right? And I like to do routing. This is the way that I prefer doing. You could, of course, do if something else, if something else, like this, and then you could check this or this request. I don't know, get uptime, and then you could, you know, load the uptime and you know, you could do something here, right? So you would then execute the getUptime function. But this is not the way that I would prefer doing this. So because it gets messy really quickly, and you constantly check if something is set. So the easier way, or what I like to do, is I like to define a variable called actions, which I will always pass here, but we'll get to that in a second. But so all I do is I switch over that. So I'll just create the switch statement and go this request action. And what this allows us to do is allows us to specify an action in a request and then just take a case and to return whatever we want to for that action. So it keeps the code a little bit neater and easier to manage. So the first thing is we said get uptime. So uptime is what you do here, and inside this code, this get uptime. That's all we need to do.
So would you put like all of your, basically everything that you would, all of your requests just in this switch case?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on how big your module is, but for most things, yes, absolutely. So all you do is you add another case and another, you know, get date or something like that, and you know, call another function.
Cool.
Right, and then you obviously define it down here. But so that's the way that I would do it. This is a way to keep it clean, and that's, you know, at least a simple way to do that. So let's actually return something. So again, response, we need to set the response, and I'm going to do this in a bit of a dirty way. I'm just going to do an exec, which, you know, is fine because we're on the Pineapple, and there's the easiest way to interact with this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to execute the uptime command. I'm going to set whatever comes back here as the response. I could also do something to show off a little bit more. Let's actually do an array, and let's set the uptime to that. And so this is just an associative array that I'm defining here in PHP, and I can. Right, so this is what's passed back. So what happens is we're gonna create a request to the module sample. We're now going to pass it an action because this is the variable. So anything we pass inside this request object is what's going to get passed here to this request object. So if you create an action, an item action, then we've got it here too. So what we can say here is just get uptime, and we're gonna do some. Yeah, let's do that. Why not? No, let's not. Let's do it right. So we talked a little bit, or I said that you should probably be doing error handling, because what you could do if there is an issue, if you're executing some more data, you probably want to, if there's an error, you want to set error to something. So again, you could set it to an array. You could set it to a simple string. That depends on what you want to do, but you might want to check that no error occurs if you're possible.
And when would it send out an error?
There's going to be an error if there's either a PHP error. There would be an error if you, as the module developer, basically throw an error. So you'd set that error variable, then we'd pull that error back. So anytime you want, you can specify this error variable. This is up to the developer. There's a couple of errors that we send if no response is returned, or there's a few reasons, or a few scenarios when we will send an error, but normally it's something that the user will set themselves. So to quickly check that there is no error though, if response dot error, wow. So if the response is undefined, what we're going to do is we're going to set we're going to set a scope dot something to response dot uptime, and we're going to call that uptime. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff because we don't really need it, and call this uptime. Right. So what we've done now is we've created a function which, when executed, is going to send a request to the module sample with the action get uptime. In the module, we're going to check get uptime is called, then actually call the function, and the function is going to set a response. So this is a really simple IO example, but that's what we'll do. And obviously now if I upload this code, well.
And so how does that response end up equaling scope.uptime?
Give me a second. Let's get rid of that and uptime here. Okay, so can you repeat your question?
Well, I was just wondering if you go back to the module.js.
Yeah.
So how does the response end up equaling scope.uptime? Oh, I see. Scope.uptime on line number 10
yes,
equals
so
response.uptime.
Yeah,
so it's always it's always response dot whatever we define.
Well, it's in this case I passed an array back. So because it's array and this is an associative array, the uptime is set to whatever this exec comes. So in here the response is the whole array, and then uptime is
that particular part of it, which equals exec uptime.
Yeah, exactly. So so right now, as you can see, nothing happens. There is a string here. If I set this to for example not loaded, for example, you'll see obviously nothing's happening here. So let's quickly add a button.
Because couldn't we just in the actual module just have it immediately call that function?
We could have it, we could inside the module.js, we could just call the function obviously, dot get uptime. And so if I pull that, you're gonna see we get the uptime after just a short second. So let's do something more interesting with this though. Let's have it be user input. So pretty.
Hello.
Get uptime. Okay. So that alone obviously isn't enough. Just because it says get uptime here, nothing's going to happen when you press this. So there's another ng. There's another Angular
ng dash
yeah, exactly.
whatever.
There's another Angular directive here. So ng, and it's a click. And on a click, what we're going to do is we want to execute the get uptime function. Again, because we can do this because it's defined on the scope. So this is why it says scope.getUptime.
Aha.
So if I upload that now.
So the HTML, when you click the button on HTML, then that that executes the JavaScript function, which then asks for it from the module PHP. The module PHP executes it on the system, gets that, and throws it back as an array to the module JS, which populates the 2 squiggly brackets uptime.
Yeah, exactly. So so if I hit this button, you're going to notice that it actually increments this number here. So, 8, 9, 10.
Cool.
So it'll just call the function every time. So that's really simple, getting something from the API. And again, this could be anything as complex or as simple as something like this, right? So the next step is something that you're probably going to be doing in a module is taking input somehow. There's a couple of interesting ways you can do that, but the easiest way to do it is, something I should have said in the very beginning. The way we handle the API is post only. So we always post or requests to the API. We don't use get, just because it makes management easier and it makes the handling of the routing a bit easier.
Right, no, that's actually some of the nice stuff. That's what I don't want to do, is all of that ugly, using gets and saying if it's set and what to send back and managing all of this. So all of this is managed for you by those request responses and errors.
Right, so that's done for a few reasons, one of them being security, another one just making it really easy for module developers, and just keeping it nice and clean and organized and easy to develop on. Also, in a business to do relatively rapid development, as you've seen, we're taking it really slow, but it's we're getting there. So let's take some input. The first thing to talk about, I think, the first important thing is let's modify this to send text and get rid of this ng click for now. And I'm going to specify an input. I'm not going to make it pretty. So we just have some text in here now, and send text, obviously it's not linked up to anything, so it's not going to do anything. So what we can do now is Angular has this attribute called ng, and I always want to type bind, but it's ng model. And we're going to set a module that's model that's on the scope. So we're going to call this input text, for example. So it's going to be input text. Okay, so what this does is allows us to use this variable on the scope, or let's define it up here. So again, we don't need this. Input text. And we're going to set it to nothing right now. I'm also going to... Okay, so
no more uptime.
No, not for now. So if I refresh this, you see there's no content in here, and send text again does nothing because we haven't hooked any of that up. But if I change this to world, for example, and upload that again, refresh, you'll see that this allows us to say hello world. So this is really useful because what happens is you're going to be able to create this API request basically, which can pre-populate inputs for you. And if you then hit save, or you want to do anything, this is actually live updating. So if I update this, the variable is being updated live. To quickly demonstrate that, what we can do...
Yeah, couldn't we just use the curly brackets again and just like paste it back?
Right, so I'm just going to make the text of the button, which is a bit hacky right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to upload this, and you're going to see that the button now says hello world, but if I remove something...
Nice.
So that's a kind of a neat little function of Angular, which allows you to, that's why I always want to say bind, but it allows you to bind models, so data models, to an input. And you can do this with anything, you can do this with anything, for example, with checkboxes or radio buttons or forms or text fields or anything like that. You're going to be able to do that with. But so let's actually make this more useful. Let's get rid of that. And
well, what do you say we actually do something with the values that you input into that?
Yeah,
I mean, we could like write that to a file on /tmp.
How about we send this to the API first? Let's get the front end done, and then we can modify the server side.
So this is kind of like the complete reverse of what we had just done with Uptime. Kind of.
No. Let's go through this one by one.
Sure.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to create an ng click again, and we're going to want to name it save text. And then in the close this, don't need that. So what we're going to do here, we can take the same function, basically same function signature. So we go scope dot send text. Really? Okay, and we're going to do an API request in here. Oh, that diesel truck outside is going again, isn't it? Okay. So again, we make the API request to our module, so let's sample, and the action, because we like actions, is going to be send text. Okay, so if we wanted to make this an input only, if we wanted to make this an input only action, right, and we didn't want to care about the response, we'd get rid of this, and we couldn't.
Well, couldn't we, send a response back and just say success, like, hey, I received your text?
Absolutely. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to create another variable, and we're going to call that I don't know, message, and no message is set right now. And in this function, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a little bit of error checking here. Response.error. Then we want to, again, we don't need to do response.uptime. If we're just going to respond with a string, then we can just do this straight away. Obviously, if you want to do error handling, you could do something like this. Right, so then you'd set the message to whatever you're sending as your error there. Okay, so this is the basics here, but because we now introduced this message, we probably want to include it somewhere in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new div. And we're going to just put message into there. And you'll see that when I reload this, we have this empty well up here, which doesn't really look very pretty, and you don't want to keep that there because the message is currently set to nothing.
Right, because that's just where our error will go, or I guess our success message too.
Right, so it'll look like this once there's content populated in it, but because there isn't right now, it kind of looks bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our module.html. This is again another Angular attribute, which is great to use. So ng show, and we only want to show it if there's content. So we just type in message. So it'll show it when message it contains values basically, or return is true. So if I reload this now, you'll see it's gone, and if I were to set it to something, it'll pop back up. So we can do that. Let me get rid of this, and then if I go to module.php here, we can leave the get uptime just to make it a bit more realistic. Add another case. I think we call it save text, right? Or send text. Send text. So if we send the send text action, which we're doing right here, then we're going to be able, we call this function, break afterwards, and we'll just create a new function.
And so this is where we'll actually do something with that text, right?
Correct. So the first thing that we want to do is, sorry, 1 second, there. The first thing that we want to do is we want to know how do we actually get this input. So the exact same way that we got this request action, right? We can get this request and then whatever we send. But you'll notice that right now the action is set to set text. We're not actually sending any data right now.
So how do we tie that into the input field?
So the way we tie this into the, well, no, not tie it into the input field. How do we get the scope input text to be sent? Well, that's as easy as doing the action. So all we do here is we send text, and then we say scope.input text. So that's all it takes. And now what we do is we send whatever's in the scope. So currently hello world, but if we modify this, it'll, you know, update the input text variable on the scope, and then whatever is currently set when we hit send text is going to be sent over. So this function is going to be called whenever.
And so what about on the PHP side? Do I have to say, how will I receive that? Do I have to specify that same name that you said there in the JavaScript?
Right. So exactly, you do this. So you go here and you look. So what's the action that I'm sending? Well, the action is send text, and the text is going to be input text. So I need to put in here.
So it'll just be text?
Yeah. So we say text. So this is the so here.
Oh, I see. We're getting the request from text from send text.
No. So what's happening is again we're sending the action is send text, right? So we're looking up here in
We're
the
saying,
switch
hey,
case.
got
We're
that
saying,
action
hey,
right there.
The action is send text. We're calling the send text function. And the send text function, again, everything in your module has this request object available to it. So inside the request object, we have just set a text, a variable called
Right.
text.
So now we're
and
just
it's set
requesting
to
it.
whatever this is. No, we're not requesting it. We're reading that from the request.
Ah,
It's already been sent.
it's already been sent. Got it.
So we're accessing this text and whatever is set to it. So it's just a key value pair basically. So we're accessing whatever is sent in here, which will right now be hello world ASD, 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 right? But so hello world. And now we want to do something with this text. Well, the first thing we could do is we could return this text, right? So what we could do is we could just, you know, return the text that we're currently getting passed as a response, just to make sure that we got everything right, that, you know, everything links up nicely. If I reload this page, hello world, and I hit send, we get back hello world. Hi Darren. We're gonna get this sent back from the API, right? So this is kind of, you know, we're again going around a loop, so let's actually do something with this. This request text, what do we want to do with this?
Well, I don't know. We're in PHP. We've got text. We could do put file contents.
Yeah. So what we can do is we can do a simple call to file put contents, and let's put it into TMP, and I don't know. And we're just gonna write out this request text. And to make sure that we can append multiple values, we're gonna add a new line, and we're gonna do file append like that. Obviously this looks terrible on my terminal right now because it's so small. On my Sublime. But yeah, so what we're doing right here, I mean, this is simple PHP. We're just putting the contents of this request, we're just throwing that into the sample file, and we're setting the mode to file append so that we don't overwrite the file every time we do this. We probably want to check. We want to check that you know, if we want to do this. So do that, and then obviously here we set this response and file saved. Okay, so let's not forget that, and upload this again, and now we should be able to say send text since it's file saved hello world.
Hooray.
Darren. I swear I can type your name.
So let's go cat the file.
So let me just sh to my pineapple here and cat temp sample file, and you're going to see it says hello world and hello Darren. I hope it isn't too small, but either way it's there, believe me.
Nice.
Well,
you know what's really cool about this is you were showing me in part of the API earlier, say I wanted to actually make something that requires configuration, I wouldn't have to say file put contents that and say /etc/config in a config file. I could actually use UCI for that and things of that nature.
Right. So we actually have this is the module that you're extending. So this is the class that you extend in our module.phpc there. You get a few things that are available. For example, executing something in the background. All it does is it makes this easier for you, right? But you can install the OPKG dependencies here. You can check if the SD card is available, check if a dependency is installed, check if a process is running, and what you were talking about, you can get UCI values. You can set UCI values. So this is really useful because now let me.
See, this is what I'm talking about, because when I was writing OpenVPN, which I lost because I was doing the wrong thing by writing it on the Pineapple, not locally.
Right.
Backups are fun, but it was just so much overhead of having to do the UCI calls and such to write the file contents to the config file and all of that stuff. So there was a lot of I don't know. This kind of standardizes it.
Right, it does. Yeah. So you can
use
the UCI system now to do that. You're gonna have to familiarize yourself a little bit with the UCI system. So you're gonna need to use these type of paths when the settings string. But that's something you learn really quickly and you can pick up really quickly. So
right, but no longer do I have to do things like PS aux and grep for things to check if something is running.
Correct. Yeah. And again, the same goes for that. And we've got download file, which we'll discuss later. You get the current firmware version. So if you want to make sure that your module only runs in a certain firmware because you're not supporting everything, then that's an easy way to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what else should we cover? Is there anything you would like to cover? Do we have questions?
We have questions, and I was figuring, we're about 50-something minutes into it, so I don't want to go too much on this very first one. I think this is a good example of just introducing the basics of the input and output and how that works. There's a lot already you can do once you start tinkering with this. I think, though, I think you should point out Module Maker before we get to the questions, because a lot of the stuff that you did just to get this started could be done for you.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of the stuff, but I do agree. Foxtrot has made this module called Module Maker, so if I'm going to install that, it's going to make him so happy that we're doing this. So we've got Module Maker. Module Maker even tells you a little bit about the different files. So module.html, it tells you. I think I found an error, Foxtrot. I want to fix that. But yeah, so it does describe the values. But what you can do is you can create a module, test module, and give it a description. I actually forgot to include a description. So inside your module.info, you would do something like.
And that's something that could be extended over time. You could have, for instance, a help URL.
Exactly.
There.
Yeah. So we're I think in one of the next upcoming updates we're going to do something like help URL or something. And you can go, put your forums link or whatever, something like that. We'll come up with something nice. We also want to add change logs and so on to for users. But let me finish this. So if I generate that, you're going to see it actually, created the.
What'd you call it? Sample module. Yeah, there you go.
I think I did. Yeah. No, test module.
Test module.
So I have to refresh my page for this. But if I go to modules and then test module, it'll actually, put some HTML on it and show you that this is loaded through Angular and so on. So this is messy, but yeah. So there's ways to make it easier. There's ways to make it to generate these initial files. But once you've done it a couple of times, then it becomes really easy. Creating these 1, 2, 3, 4 files in these 2 folders is a matter of just getting it set up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to get into some of the questions that we've received?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the first one here comes from Audible Blink. And he says, I'd like to create an Angular service. I noticed that there is a function called register controller. I'd normally create a service with app.factory, which takes both name and function. And app being a global variable, he says, is there something similar to this for services?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so there is. The problem with services is that you'll have to lazy load them like controllers, and that's something that I can get into I would rather get into later because it's kind of a longer thing to go through and very specific. But I can definitely write something up on that on how to easily do that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, I think that we should definitely add that to the list of future episodes. I'd love to continue.
Yeah,
doing
that's
this,
why. Like we're going to go.
We'll see
into
what the
more
feedback
details,
is.
but yeah,
Everybody's going to come back and say like, "I hate your keyboard," but it's okay. You're not rocking a DOS keyboard. What are you doing? Rhino
Yeah.
wrote in. He wanted to know. He says he just wanted to comment about the bracketing system. He says this bracket syntax is needed. Putting $scope and other services into the parameter lists for the function is where AngularJS dependency injection actually happens. The bracket syntax is to preserve variable names during minification.
Yeah, I know that, but that's why I'm putting it there, because you may minify, or we might minify on the fly and so on. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks good to me. I like it because my eyes snap to it and I'm like, oh, I know what I'm looking at there.
Right.
So, but that's a style thing.
Well, yeah, no, sure, but that's so this minification thing, yes, you don't have to use the square brackets there. You could just pull your function directly in. You don't have to define the controller there. You could also just do, finding. There's an Angular directive to find the Pineapple app and then attach to that, which is, by the way, how you would hook the service in if you're still listening. Audible blink. We do it because it's the best practice. So
nice. All right. Also received another question here from Korang, who just wants to know if there's any good online resources you can recommend for AngularJS.
AngularJS's homepage has some really, really great tutorials if you can stand their 30-second intro video music thing that they put on everything, but it is good stuff. Some of it is more outdated, but you're going to find so many resources on YouTube, and the official ones by AngularJS are really good, and Angular.io is also very good.
Awesome. OS1 RIS25. Let me see if that's in LeetSpeak. It's Osiris. Yes, it is. Osiris writes, I'm wondering if I bring this into a location and I get success of what I'm trying to do, how easy is it then? He's talking about bringing the Pineapple to a client site, I'm assuming. He says, then how easy can I export the data from my actions and not have to take screenshots and so on? So it's not particular to this coding session, but more generally speaking with the Pineapple.
Right. Well, there's a couple of things that you can do on the Pineapple. We just added, for example, the ability to in PineAP to there's good stuff
from the log.
Yeah, so you can actually download the Pineapple the PineAP SSID pool here. You can go to your log and you can actually download your log. So you're able to do all of this stuff now. There are functions, if you're a module developer, there are functions that you can use to expose the downloads. I mentioned that for a second there. The inside the
API.
Now, but yeah, inside the API. A function which you can use to download a file, and we'll get into that. I think the next video we'll talk more about that. Yeah,
that's a great point, and actually I want to say that that's one of the modules that I want to be building, in fact, with you, is putting together a module that does analysis, because there's so much interesting information that you can glean from a PineAP log, and I think it would be really fun to build that out as we go. Received another question here from Matthew, who says, would it be possible to set up an NTP module to change the time of the target computer to unvalidate or unverify SSL certificates?
Right, well, so there is actually a module on the Mark V called DeLorean. It's a CLI module, so it's something that I'm hoping will get ported anytime soon. If not, then I'm sure there's lots of people that would just, quickly port it over. But it's just a CLI Python script right now, so absolutely something that will get added. Now, the effectiveness of it is different. So it depends on the machine, depends on if it's vulnerable. I'm not going to get into the whole SSL strip and SSL split and HSTS thing here, because it's a very long thing which ends up with people. It's very confusing of which websites are still vulnerable, which systems are vulnerable to which downgrade attacks.
Sure,
and so on. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you down with that?
Yeah, sure.
So Ken wants to know if we can take a look at some of the authentication and anti-CSRF stuff in the firmware real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, isn't that... That's a lot of the emphasis. in this, in fact.
So I can pull up this, for example. So what we do, to give you a really quick rundown, because love you, Ken. So what we do is we just call our API and we initialize the magic method, and this actually takes care of the security. So we call this function. We do this only thing that is the only GET request here, which is the handle downloads, which does this, where we actually stream a file down. But we get into that later. And then we check if you're authenticated, and then if you are authenticated, we route. And authentication is done a couple of ways. The first one is that we set, we're using AngularJS's built-in way to pass cross-site request forgery tokens. We do that by sending basically a header, but then again, authenticated, we check if you're logged in, but the actual authentication is done in here. And again, so we have API tokens, which again we'll get into sometime later. You're logging in, verifying your password, so on. Authentication is checked. Yeah, you'd have to be more specific with what exactly you want to see. If
okay.
he's
well, it's a pretty low latency that's follow-ups.
Yeah, that's why. If he replies, then I'll.
And while he does, I've got a question here from Demsec, who wants to know if there's currently any support for asynchronous calls. He says it would be pretty cool to have an automatic notification when you get a new client connected. I guess that's just an example. And you know what? Maybe you pull up the what is it? The F12 tool's called.
1 second.
Let me switch over to you for a sec. There we go. Okay.
So if you watch this right up in the corner here, if I
the very bottom of the window.
Yeah, if I hit
oh, you know what? Just hit up enter a bunch too.
Oh, sure.
There you go.
Okay, so what happens is that we actually have these notifications. We have a notification system built in. That's something we probably should have gotten into maybe, but we'll do it next time. So we have notifications that you can send. So you're absolutely able to execute a script on the back end and then have it send notifications. You're able to hook into certain services with that. PHP itself obviously runs for how long you send off the script. I mean, you could do things like forking to the background, but it's asynchronous in the nature that we have 8 threads that are listening constantly. So you can make calls at the same time, but it's not asynchronous, I think, in the way that you're thinking, if you're thinking of things like Node.js or something.
Cool.
I just want to quickly, one last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
About what Ken asked about the security. The big thing here is that the big thing here is that what do you call it? We have just a single input and a single output apart from this download. So there's very little vectors that are attackable here, which allows us to, if there is ever an issue, to fix it relatively quickly and get through that without having to do and branch out into many things there.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I think that it's really important to standardize this, and by providing that API, it means that no more hacky stuff. Because I'll be the first to admit, man, my PHP is hacky at best. So, thank you for pushing us all to use this, whether it be PHP, Node.js, and all of that. That brings me to the next question from Jason C, who wants to know, well, why don't you just use Node? Yes, Seb. How come you're not using Node?
So Node is heavy, and I despise Node, and that's personal, I guess. But I don't like Node. It's got lots of it's got lots of benefits. Don't get me wrong, but it's something that's just too heavy to run on the Pineapple.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to wrap it up here in just a sec. We do have 3 more questions real quick. Renton wants to know if we're going to host any of these files that we made today to make them available for everybody watching at home to take a look and play with themselves.
Yeah, I can. I
to
mean,
play with the files
themselves, not with themselves. You sure? We were doing, ASMR tests earlier where I just get really
stop it, Seb. We're doing a professional podcast here.
Right. No, but so absolutely we can make these files available. I'll clean them up a bit and include all the different files and the code that I removed, so that there's examples of everything. Just kind of clean it up, and I'll post that later. Yeah.
Yes, and you should join us. Forums.hack5.org. You'll find the Wi-Fi Pineapple boards there, and you'll find all the links from WiFiPineapple.com as well. It's been really active lately. It's been awesome, as well as right down there, irc.hack5.org /pineapple. we've been having a lot of fun in there. So join us. So Renton will get those samples. And 2 last questions before we wrap up. I would like to keep this an hour if possible. Audible Blink says, what's the location of module PHP file with the helper methods, just for the fun of it?
You can find all of our API in /pineapple/API, and you'll find the module.php in there along with everything else.
Cool. Yeah, you'll see all those nifty functions that you can send stuff in and get stuff out, and everybody's happy, right? That's how it works, right, Seb? And then, you know what, actually, just Jay Tech wanted to know how we do our live stream, and I will just point to I'll add a video in the description on my personal YouTube channel where we kind of show the craziness that is this. And I want to hear your feedback about it too, because we could have easily, I say easily, we could have done this in a Google Plus Hangout and done a Hangouts on Air, but we lose the ability to do proper screen sharing, at least in Linux, where it will stretch 3 monitors across as one gigantic screen. You can't see anything, it's a mess. Or you have to share on an application by application basis, and you can't switch from, say, Sublime to your terminal to your browser directly. You have to go back to your webcam and back again every time you switch applications. It's terrible. So I just want to know, let us know in the comments your feedback, if this was cool, if it was terrible, what you think, just generally speaking as well, not just the setup here, because this is something that Sebastian and I would like to continue doing. So if you have more ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover, go ahead and let us know. Just leave those in the feedback.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
That's it. First one's in the can. I think we're done.
Cool.
All right. So with that, we will see you guys next time. We're not sure exactly what the release schedule for this will be. It really depends on the feedback and
Wait,
such.
You don't mean in the next... I thought the next one launches in an hour, Darren.
Oh, right. So we're going to go prepare for the... No. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, we did build a lot of infrastructure for this, so we'll be doing this again here soon. But definitely send your questions. If you have questions for us to cover next time, it will help guide the show. With that, I'm Darren Kitchen.
And I'm Sebastian Kinne. Thank you very much.
Yep. See you guys on the internet. Cheers.